Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're looking at something a little bit different. Rat the Lich King and my healer main choice, and basically the reasoning behind my choices in terms of what makes a healer strong, what makes a healer fun for me. Again, this is my choice. Feel free to comment which healer you're maining in Rat. Are you excited about Rat the Lich King? Are you getting hyped up at things like that? And if you watch my channel and things like that, you probably know that I do play Classic and I tend to get really hyped up for new releases. And Rat has some special meaning to me because it's the first kind of expansion where I really started to heal. I began my journey back a long time ago in Classic when I started off playing as a Protection Warrior. Then I went with Warlock. Then during Rat, I started playing Restoration Shaman. So I went through a lot of the Rat content, or the original Rat content, as Resto Shaman, and I don't really want to do the same thing this time around, so I'm not going to be playing Resto Shaman for purely that reason. And I'm sure a lot of people before new expansions coming out, they're looking at the videos, they're looking at tier lists, or they're trying to see which healer to play, because deciding on a main class, especially in Classic content, is kind of important because it is a lot harder to maintain alts unless you decide to put a lot of your time and effort into this expansion. Picking the right class is really important because you're going to, for example, getting your profession, so maxing your professions, maxing your character gear is more important or more valuable in Classic, in my opinion, when you compare it to something like retail where you're getting resets every couple of months. So I do think that main choice for Rat is very significant, and you need to really kind of resonate with the class. And I know a lot of people probably watch these tier list videos where, for example, Holy Paladin is ranked as the absolute giga chat healer that a lot of people are going to be playing, and I agree with them. I think there is a lot of positives for Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin is gaining new abilities like Beacon of Light. They're gaining abilities like Sacred Shield, and all of a sudden their mana consumption is extremely good in Rat. Their single target healing, aka tank healing, is kind of crazy when you look at the tools that they have, and on top of that, everything and anything is Holy Paladin loot because they can use all of it. So there's a lot of advantages to playing a class like a Holy Paladin, but that is not going to be my main for Rat because I am going to be playing Discipline Priest. And I knew what I got myself into when I chose Discipline Priest, because majority or the niche of this class is about preventing damage. It's not about reacting or healing. Again, when I say reacting, if you're doing 10-man content, you're probably going to be using Flash, Heal, and Pray or Healing a lot more often. If you're doing 25-man content, you're most likely going to be applying Power or Shield a lot more. So there is differences in gameplay when you compare it to small raids and larger raids, but it all boils down to the fact that you're preventing damage because of Power World Shield. And Power World Shield is, it's just such an iconic ability, and Discipline Priest had this bubble type of bot mentality for a long time in terms of expansions. Now, I did not play Mr. Pandaria, but in VOD you had very similar things in Warlords of Draenor where Discipline Priest would apply shields, and that would be their main kind of source of healing, preventing damage. And I can tell you that it is far easier to prevent damage than react to damage. If you're reacting to damage and you need to heal a person who's 50% HP, there is a lot of, again, you're probably competing with 3 or 4 other healers in your raid group, and you can be sniped, and all of a sudden your healing might do nothing. While on the flip side, if you're playing a Discipline Priest or someone with absorbs, it is a lot easier to prevent that damage because you're only competing against yourself, which leads me to some of the downsides of Discipline Priest. Because of the way Weakened Soul debuff works, you cannot have more than one Discipline Priest in a lot of the raid groups because you're just going to be competing against each other, and your healing is going to be severely reduced because Weakened Soul is applied by any priest. And it can be really annoying when you're about to apply a shield, but they have Weakened Soul debuff from the other Discipline Priests in your raid, which means that if you're trying to poke a lot of the 25-man content in Rat the Lich King, you'll probably see some priests in the group and you have to ask them, hey, are you Discipline or are you Holy? Because if you're Discipline, we cannot have 2 Discipline Priests, and this is why having a Holy off-spec might be very important. But I've really enjoyed my Discipline Priest so far, and there's a lot of ways to min-max this class if you want to, because I don't want people to overcomplicate a class, because a lot of times I find Classic and Rat and things like that as a source of escape, as a really chill, relaxing time where you can play with your friends, have nice time in raids, in heroic dungeons, things like that. You don't have to overcomplicate it, because a lot of the times, a lot of the classes in Rat and Classic, they don't have really complex rotations. They don't have multiple buttons to press. A lot of the times there's only 1 or 2 buttons that you're pressing throughout the raid encounter or a heroic dungeon encounter, and then you have these supplemental abilities that you might use once in a while. And Discipline Priest is not an exception to this. Like I mentioned, in raid environments, spamming power or shield is a pretty big portion of your overall healing. And something like 5-man dungeons or 10-man raids, you'll notice that flash heal is gonna come into rotation. Prayer of healing might come into rotation to supplement your HPS and raid HPS needs. And again, prayer of mending is always being thrown around no matter what raid content you're doing. So there is, how do I say, min-max into this class, especially if you look at the talent Rapture, because there is a lot of ways to optimize this. When you have your power or shield being completely depleted, you're going to get a certain amount of mana back. Now, this can proc multiple times if there's multiple people who get their shields depleted at the exact same time. So if you're doing content and you're following like raid boss add-ons and things like that, and you know there's going to be a whole raid-wide damage in the next 10 seconds, you can apply shields on everyone in your party. Now keep in mind, if you apply a shield on a tank and that shield gets depleted because the tank is taking consistent damage, your Rapture is going to proc. It has an internal cooldown, so it can be a bad thing. So you might not apply power or shield on a tank because they don't need that healing and they don't want to proc Rapture, and then 10 seconds later the raid takes a huge AoE damage and all of your shields proc at the exact same times, your Rapture doesn't have internal cooldown, and you get a bunch of mana back. So this is how you can optimize Discipline Priest. Do you have to do that? Not really, but it allows you to have a higher skill ceiling when playing this class, which generally revolves around one button power or shield spam in certain content. And besides that, gearing up as a cloth user in Rat can be difficult because there's a lot of competition in the cloth section, because there is a lot of specs and classes that can use or will roll on cloth. Holy Paladins, Balance Druids, Elemental Shamans, the list goes on, and all of a sudden if you're a big loot enjoyer, you might have a lot of competition and it might take a little time, but these are small negatives when the list of positives is so big. And the main reason I wanted to play Discipline Priest is because the fact that you can prevent damage before any other healer gets their hands on healing the person, there's something really satisfying about preventing all the damage and making all the other healers sad in your raid. That is the main reason why I decided to play Discipline Priest. Joking aside, there's a lot of other healers that I considered for this. I decided to go with Discipline Priest because genuinely I never experienced this shielding kind of meta as a Discipline Priest, and I wanted to experience this at least once, because in WoD I was playing Resto Druid and I was getting sniped by a Discipline Priest with a shield, so this is my payback to them. This is the actual real reason. But there's a lot of other healers who are good. I considered Resto Druid for a really long time because I honestly felt really connected to Druid gameplay for a really long time. They're getting wild growth in Rat, and you're doing a lot of this wild growth rejuve spamming in raids, which is, again, it's not overly difficult, but it is fun. And getting an AoE ability is very, very cool, because a lot of the times healers didn't have AoE abilities. They had to rely on single target even for AoE type of content. I looked at Holy Paladin, and again, Holy Paladin is such a strong healer. It's probably going to be the most played healer in Rat. And again, I talked about the beacons. I talked about their single target, their mana consumption. It's very, very, very strong. There's very few things that you can say that are negative about Holy Paladin. So I'm not going to say anything because they're just so strong. And if you enjoy Holy Paladin, you should definitely go and play a Holy Paladin, because they're going to be very, very sought after and very wanted. My only kind of reservation about them is that it's probably going to be a lot of Holy Paladins out there, but there's no reason not to stack Holy Paladins. You can stack Holy Paladins, unlike Discipline Priest, where I talked about that weakened soul debuff. And if you really enjoyed Resto Shaman, again, Resto Shaman, a lot of people are kind of down on Resto Shaman in phase 1. They're kind of waiting for later down in the expansion with their pickup in terms of healing and things like that. But I genuinely think the Resto Shaman, again, chain heal in AoE situations, lesser healing wave when you need single targeters. They have a lot of toolkit based on the situation. You have a lot of spells that you can use. Again, chain heal is extremely iconic, and if you really like the animation, honestly, it can be good enough just to play Resto Shaman for that chain heal animation and checking out those bounces. And as a Discipline Priest, I definitely have to have something like Holy ready in the bag in case there is going to be another Discipline Priest in a raid. And Holy Priest, Circle of Healing, Prayer of Healing, Flash Heal, and all those things, Prayer of Mending, they're still in your toolkit and you can do good healing if you need to, but it is the complete opposite of Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest is a proactive healer. It's applying shields that are 30 seconds long before damage comes out. And Holy Priest is only reacting to the damage that happens. Someone loses HP, you press a button to heal them, whether it's going to be single target or AoE, and you have the tools to do that. And before I end the video, I also want to talk about the fact that there is dual specialization coming down in pre-patch and is going to be available in Rat. And honestly, it's one of the best things that they ever added, because when I think about the fact that you had to play TBC and Classic with a single spec, and as a healer was trying to do quests or trying to do, you know, gold farming or whatever, and they still want to do it in heal spec, it is extremely extremely painful. The fact that there was a huge shortage of tanks in Classic for a long time, because a lot of times you couldn't swap because the cost of talent swapping is just it's too much. So the fact that Jewel Spec is coming out, it did play a role in my main choice, because, for example, I might be playing Discipline Priest with Shadow off spec. I think Shadow is really fun, and you are getting mines here, and it's about time Shadow is getting some sort of AoE capabilities. And I think it's really fun. I think Shadow Priest is really fun. If you're playing a Druid, a Resto Druid, Balanced Druid is really fun. I think Starfall coming back, or you're getting Starfall, is really exciting. Feral is probably going to be doing really well later in the phases. And a lot of other classes, Paladin, for example, Red Paladin or Prot Paladin. Prot Paladin is really, really great. And Resto Shaman Enhancement, there's a lot of builds for Enhancement, there's a lot of builds for Elemental. You have to consider the off-spec capabilities. I chose Discipline Priest mainly with Shadow off-spec because I will be leveling as Shadow. I will be trying to, again, the second that I pick up mines here, it's going to feel a lot better doing these dungeons, because there's a lot of AoE in dungeons, and dotting up people doesn't feel as great when there's huge AoE pulls. So there is a lot of things to look forward to in Rat. My choice is Discipline Priest. It might not be to everyone's expectation. There is a lot of healers that can be considered as better. Discipline Priest is still very, very strong. It's most likely the top 2 healers in Wrath of Lich King. If you do want to pick up that legendary mace, if you do want to get it, Discipline Priest is not going to be the main choice, because it's probably at the bottom of the list in terms of priority for Valanir. So that's something to consider if you're going to put up or put in a lot of time into Classic and try to get that legendary mace. A lot of people are going to be playing Holy Paladin. I'm not going to be playing Holy Paladin. In Wrath, I'm going to be playing Discipline, and I'm going to be experiencing the power of Power Word Shield and absorbing and preventing damage so other healers don't have to heal. It might not be the most overly exciting gameplay, but you can have or min-max it as much as you want, because you have things like Rapture, and you have ways of getting your mana back to Shadow Fiend, Hymn of Hope, and you can combine them and get more mana and all of those things. There is neat tricks and tips on how to optimize this class, but you don't have to. You just need to have fun with the class that you choose. Let me know what class you're maining in Rat. Thank you for watching this video again. I really appreciate all the support, like and subscribe and all those things, and I'll see you in my next video.